Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Benelli, and this is Robyn, my daughter, and our guest, Carolina Sotomayor. So everybody can just say hi. We'll
Hi.
introduce everyone at a deeper level. This is, of course, a Reiki Lifestyle podcast. I'm going to just keep a little bit of our announcements short. As many of you know, you can find our Reiki classes on our website, reikilifestyle.com. I do have Reiki 1 and 2, Reiki Master, and Karuna Reiki Master coming up right at the beginning of February. So all of those classes are kind of in the beginning to middle of February. So you can check out Reiki Lifestyle for that. Our animal Reiki classes will be in March. So you can look for those. Then our social media is always Reiki Lifestyle. And I do encourage you to look at our YouTube channel because we really do a lot of content on YouTube and a lot of invocations, Reiki journeys, etc. And then, of course, we have a podcast and, the Distance Reiki Share. That's the one we always want to remember to say. The Distance Reiki Share is every Tuesday morning from 9:30 to 11 a.m. Pacific time. And it is free online and an amazing community of people. We've been together now almost 3 years. So we've been meeting weekly since. And again, if you can't make that in person, a lot of the content that we share in that is on our YouTube channel.
If you can't make that live, it's not in person.
Can't make it live. Yeah.
Also, my social media is Robyn Benelli Reiki.
So, yeah, thank you. Robyn Benelli Reiki.
Yeah.
And Robyn Benelli Reiki Lifestyle Official?
No, just Robyn Benelli Reiki.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, now let's get to it and introduce our guest. Really excited to introduce Carolina Sotomayor. And she is a fertility Reiki womb healer, and she serves women who are trying to conceive. She's the founder of Fertility Foundation Collective, a monthly membership providing monthly Reiki healing Zoom calls, Reiki guided meditations, pre-recorded healing modules, and master classes. Carolina has personally coached and healed over 500 women in the healing space and helped bring over 70 Reiki babies into the world. Oh, that's so beautiful. She is attuned to 4 different lineages of Reiki and is a proven medium connecting moms to their spirit babies. After conceiving her own son with Reiki, Carolina has been on a mission to help women conceive with energy healing and to heal through pregnancy and postpartum. So she's here to talk about all of those parts of her life and her story and her gifts and skills and abilities. You can find her at carolinasotomayor.com. Her email, hello@carolinasotomayor.com, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and her YouTube channel all are Carolina Sotomayor. In those the way those are done. And then she also has a podcast, and her podcast is Carolina Sotomayor Podcast and is on Apple and Spotify. So the topic today is how Reiki helped Carolina conceive her son and how Reiki can boost fertility. So Carolina, welcome. And I'd like to just start with you introducing yourself the way that you would like, and also to begin with sharing your story.
Sure. Hi, I'm Carolina. I'm based in Omaha, Nebraska, and I am many things. I am Latina. I'm a mom of 1 boy, and I'm married. And I've had multiple careers, but currently living my best life, doing Reiki full time and using my gifts that I've discovered through my Reiki journey to be a full-time entrepreneur. And that includes helping women conceive with Reiki. It's how I conceived my son. And it literally, Reiki has saved and changed my life in so many ways. I know that's so cliche, but it has allowed me to feel like I can be who I am in this life and experience miracles on the daily and allow myself to open up to who I was meant to be versus in a box, which is what I felt before I had my spiritual awakening. Reiki Reiki actually gave me the answers to everything I was searching for that I couldn't find in church, or that church was trying to tell me to do and I couldn't do. I couldn't quiet my mind. I couldn't move past in talk therapy. I would just plateau. It allowed me to move through trauma, and it moved through things that were meant to destroy me. And I was able to create this life that no one thought I would be able to have. So for me, Reiki was the gateway to getting everything that I wanted. I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have a child. And I've had a lot of trauma. Who hasn't, right? So, but for me, I didn't want to be on pills and there's, if that works for you, that's great. But for me, I had done that and it didn't stop. It didn't stop the hurt. So for me, Reiki really changed how I handled the trauma that had happened to me, how I handle emotion. Life's still going to happen. I think that's like a misconception with spirituality, is like, oh, it's a fix all. No, this is not like a magic wand. It gave me skills to like actually change how I approach things, how my perspective, raise my vibration, gave me the tool, the ultimate tool to heal myself, my son, change the energy of our home, to go from frantic and panicked to, okay, if I do feel that, I can move through it and understand what's the trigger. Like I didn't like, what do you mean trigger? Like it gave me so much education and knowledge to move through life. And as life comes up, to actually manage and still keep on course with what I want to create in my life, because I'm the creator of my life. So ultimately, Reiki helped me find myself and my purpose. And through that, we arrived here where I offer Reiki for fertility, because fertility through postpartum, because I've lived through it, and it wasn't, and that's really just, I find truth in your pain. I find that there's a lot of what you're designed or meant to do in this life is in the victory of you overcoming those biggest struggles, the most painful points in your life. The truth for you and your story are in those moments. In my painful moments, and I've conquered them, and I've been able to move through them and move past them, I found so many truths of what I was capable of, and what I was truly meant to do in this life. And that was to connect with women. It was to go back to the womb, and whether that is healing your womb, your own conception into this world, or preparing your womb for a baby, or restoring the power to your womb, healing that chakra in postpartum, because so much was taken away. Or if there's been loss, how do we put the pieces back together? How do we allow her to move forward after maybe she's lost a baby? And what is that? How does that affect the rest of her life? Because we still have to move forward. A lot of the things that I serve women with are because I've lived through it. And a lot of my trauma has been either to my pelvis or through emotional trauma. So a lot of the things that I've noticed when I've worked with women, it all went back to the womb. It all went back to feeling safe or emotional stability or security or deservingness, worthiness, connection to themselves. Like there was a shut off, and there wasn't either connection or it was just so depleted. I saw that over and over. I do virtual Reiki now, but for years I practiced at a chiropractor's office, and that's where I noticed all these patterns. And I've seen women who are trying to conceive all the way to menopause, and in every age group. And when I first started my Reiki practice, it was only focused on postpartum. So we've gone full circle here. And every single person I saw, it went back to the womb. And it was women who have been assaulted or not assaulted, but just like even childhood trauma that's not letting them feel seen. And that's they're holding on. And that's why that chakra is closed, whether it's painful periods or PCOS or things like that. There's a connection there of like, how much can they allow themselves to fully be free of the and fully shine and allow them to feel emotionally safe to feel all their feelings and share them. And all of that goes back to the womb. So over time, someone actually called me, oh, you're the womb healer. And I was like, wait, that's it. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing womb healing. And I had never heard, there's quite a few of us, but not many. But I'm the only one that focuses on fertility that I'm aware of on social media. And I have looked high and low. So I can see my son with Reiki. We had tried and tried and tried. Nothing was wrong with me. And I know I didn't want to do IVF or IUI. I went to one Reiki appointment, and the next month we were testing positive. So it was my first Reiki session I had ever had done. And I was pregnant the next month. And that's what started it all. That's what started my Reiki journey. Was I was recommended by my therapist and a psychic here in Omaha. And the same week, they weren't connected in any way. And they said, you need to go get Reiki. And I was grieving the loss of my dad. And I was a newlywed, and we couldn't get pregnant. And nobody knew that we were trying. I also had, at that same time, it was pure chaos at that point. I was also recovering from a horse accident. I used to have horses, and I had a really gnarly head concussion. And between the grief, the head concussion, and trying to conceive, and I was on medical leave. God works in mysterious ways, and he put me on medical leave. And I was like, I need to heal this concussion. And I'm so over this stupid grief. I've been suffering for so long. I'm ready just to be happy again. And I was in the psychic shop looking I was like, do you have some rocks in here? I was like very early in my spiritual journey. I was like, do you have some rocks in here? The pendulum is not working. And I was just taking all the workshops, and I was so new to the spirituality space and my awakening. And she's like, girlfriend, your chakras are blocked. It was like, chakra what? And then the therapist, because I was very medical at that point still. And she's like, your energy needs to be balanced. And I know that you're trying to move more holistically. You need Reiki. So twice in 1 week, I got Reiki at the place the therapist recommended. And she ended up being my Reiki teacher for Usui traditional Reiki. And later, after I gave birth, she attuned me to Reiki 1 and 2. But the next month I was pregnant with my son, Ollie, and now he's 6. So yeah, so Reiki really has made my life so full circle. It's crazy.
Wow. That's amazing. First of all, I love all of it. And it's not cliche, at least in this podcast and in I think all of our circles, that we talk about how much Reiki has changed our lives, and how it supports us in, like, I love how you said it's not a magic wand, but it supports us through the things that we need support through, and helps us to move through them in ways that, like, I think, thank God I had it,
Right.
because I'm moving through it a lot more consciously than I was before. Like you said, it's like, oh, before it was chaos, and doesn't mean that I'm not going to have stuff, but it means that I can move through it from a conscious perspective. So yeah.
It is a common, that aspect of spirituality in people who were newly awakened, or I'm on TikTok. So I have my largest following on TikTok. And that is the newest thing that I get questions, or when I do live Reiki, or I do a free monthly circle for women. That's the biggest thing. They're like, I'm going to get pregnant after this. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. That's not how this works. Reiki is not, it's not, I always say healing's not a one-time event. It's a relationship you need to have. You need to have a relationship with healing, and maybe not necessarily Reiki is going to be for all seasons of your life. But for me, it is. Reiki feels like home to me. And I've tried other different modalities, but in combination with Reiki. But for me, I think that's the biggest misconception is one time, one done, and I think that is healing is a relationship that you need to have, just like money or your spouse relationship or friendship. You need to invest in it, and you need to exercise it. You need to nurture it, and you need to seek it out.
It's a relationship with yourself, really.
Right.
And Reiki helps facilitate that. And there's many
100%.
ways to do that. Like you said,
100%.
all about what you're called to and what matches with your frequencies and what matches with, what you feel like is home. And I agree that, I know for us, and part of the reason that we have this podcast is because it's also Reiki, and however that manifests in your life.
Absolutely.
So one of the reasons that I was really excited to have you on is because of your work with womb healing and fertility, and just the topic in general, you sharing your story. I have a 6-year-old as well, and she actually was really easy to conceive for me personally, but after her, when we were trying to conceive again, it didn't work for us. I had a miscarriage, and then after wasn't able to conceive. And I also didn't feel called to go into the journey with IVF. So we now have made the decision that she's our wonderful child, and we love the status of our family at this point. But just going through that process, and the grief, the postpartum as well, after having a child, going through the hardship that, is kind of an unseen burden on people when you are trying to conceive, and that up and down and constant,
Really rough.
yeah, that it's just like this, it's a constant burden, and for everybody in the relationship, but I think specifically women, I think that so many times we like carry the responsibility of that, even if it's not anything to do with whether we're able to conceive or not. Like, and maybe it's because we really want to be mothers. I don't know what that is, but also going through the process, I really noticed that it wasn't talked about that much. Like, it's not publicly talked about that much. And I understand that it's a private thing that people need to go through their own journey and whether they want to talk about or not. So I don't mean it that way. Like, whether people are called to share or not is their own personal journey and choice. But I noticed after having my miscarriage, it was like it was kind of talked about in like hushed tones. Do I ask about it? Do I not ask about it? Can I ask how you're doing? And just out of people caring, there's not this like this known kind of sociological, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
A lot of people don't know what to say
They don't
when
know what
there's
to
a loss,
say. And then
or what's appropriate in a grieving journey.
Yeah. And
They
you
don't
do that.
understand that miscarriage is a loss.
Exactly.
A lot of people are like, oh, she lost something. They don't recognize it. Like, there's a subconscious, there's not like a connection made in their brain that this was a baby, this was a hope, this was a dream, this was something that you prayed for probably for a really long time. they don't understand that now that there's this escaping hole in your chest, like that there is like this thing, and they don't know how to handle that.
Yeah. There's not with like,
No,
I feel like with loss of family or friends, things like that, like we know how to talk about it. We know, how to ask about
because
it.
you probably have seen them. They were
Exactly.
tangible. They
Yeah. And there's no,
existed.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no shame. It's
You
funny.
just take a casserole and you say,
Yeah.
here you go.
Yeah. And it's funny that I even bring up that word shame, because I do feel like it's changing. But in addition to the work that you're doing, I think that it's also really wonderful to have it in, to talk about it, because it's so common. That was the other thing. As soon as you start talking about it, it's like, oh yes,
Yeah.
I had multiple, oh, I had this, and there's so much out there that it's just not talked about yet.
Yeah. And especially there's different types of infertility and there's different types of losses. I interviewed on my podcast, I actually interviewed a pregnancy loss and recovery coach. And one thing that she said, regardless of like how many weeks you were, a loss is a loss. But depending on where you are in that, where you lost your baby, there's also a lot of things that people don't talk about is the process of exit that can be even more traumatizing. And I do something called birth reprocessing, that's for birth trauma. And basically, and then we do something called wound clearing and blessing. And I usually really like to do that after a woman has had a loss, because there's so much that we need to clear and release. And that's like a repetitive process. It's a multi-appointment type of thing, because so much gets stored. And after you clear one layer, you don't, and you say the story, there might something else going to come up that wasn't there before. So I agree with you 100%. It's stories of loss are not shared often enough. And it's just immediately met with, oh my gosh, you're so strong and I'm so sorry. But also then it's brushed away and forgotten about and not talked about again or honored again. And there's no established or known or popular way of connecting that mom again with the baby. In my practice is I teach them how to safely channel and connect with baby in their dreams, in the meditations, how to receive signs with them to continue that relationship. For me, is death doesn't mean a relationship has to end. And that came in 2014 when my dad died, and it started my spiritual awakening. And at that point, he was the closest person. He was the hardest person I ever had. He was the hardest person in my life to love. And when I lost him, I lost a piece of myself. I was like, how does this happen? Death is very bizarre. Especially, when you lose a parent, it really rocks your world in so many ways. But what I came through my life experience through that was I decided death doesn't have to be an end to a relationship. And I carried that through into my membership. So this baby is gone. They're not going to be with us, but what can we do to connect with that soul, to honor them? What do they want us to know? What do you want to share with them? And so that kind of exercise gives mom something to hold on to able to cope, to move forward with, so that this is not just over. That the way that in the sense that we were thinking it was going to happen, yes, but what can we do to move forward in what we have access to? So I have found that that's been very helpful as a tool to teach women to do, and that way they can connect with this soul that's a part of them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I had been professionally in Reiki and really connecting into the spiritual realm before I conceived. And when I conceived, I'd kind of met the spirit of of the baby. And that exit that you said, that is something that's definitely not talked about enough, and that process and how gnarly that can be. I had a pretty big experience there. But yeah, that's really interesting, because I connected with it after, and then I had thought that that because we were going to still try to conceive, that spirit was just going to come in another time and in a different form. And then going through that process of like, oh, this is not how our lives are going to be created at this point. And, just that level of what that spirit is deciding to teach me, and the gifts that it has brought into my life and being connected into it, even outside of how I thought that it would manifest. So I think that's a really amazing process. Thank God that I had Reiki to be a part of that. I don't think without it, I would have been able to do all of that process and have practitioners like, luckily I'm able to work with Colleen and lots of other people in the circle and go through the really hard pieces of the emotions and sit in those. And but it's such beautiful work that you're doing to help women with that process.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I find that sometimes I am found a little too late. I don't even say necessarily too late, but that they've had to sit in heaviness for so long, and they find me right before they want to in preparation to conceive again. But it's been a really long time, or years, since the miscarriage, and that always pains me. Or and it always takes my breath away just thinking about how the messages that I call them spirit baby messages, because there's a fantastic book, not to steal his title, but I do like an oracle card reading. We ask certain questions to the baby, but it's just so, and then we invite, like I do a circle, we do a guided meditation, and I hold space for mom, and I ask for the new soul that they're trying to conceive to step forward. And every session's a little bit different, but the healing that happens in those Reiki guided meditations and the channeling is so surreal. And we're able to I actually asked the baby that is lost, what do we need to change? What about the womb? I go into soul contracts. What was life purpose? And I think a big thing for people who are just getting into spirituality or who have suffered a loss, a huge thing that is delivered in our sessions are that they didn't do anything wrong. And I know that they say that, but the reason that you didn't do anything wrong was, if we can get into soul contracts, and if that's something they're willing to receive or talk about, it's as you were predestined. There was contracts made before we even came here. So that baby was going to live 100 years outside the womb, or 5 days, or just like you're living X amount of years, however that the client is. I'm 39. So in my contract, I was destined to live outside the womb. That baby's soul contract was already destined before they came. So there was nothing physically you could have done differently to make it a different outcome. And then we go and describe like the people around you, and we go a little bit deeper into like, what is the soul contract? And with that knowledge, they're able to let go a lot easier of the shame and like mistrust of their body. Like they did something wrong, like and that's a big component to the process of like them thinking that they did something wrong. So, and that is usually a big shift for a lot of women that they take away from those sessions, or just like, they couldn't have done anything different. They couldn't have slept anything different. They couldn't, it wasn't the lunch meat, it wasn't any of the things. You couldn't have walked down the stairs any different. You could have not worn a different pair of shoes that day. if the soul contract, and we go into like explaining what that is, like, both sides of the coin, and like, going to even people who may have harmed you, your parents, your siblings, and what does those soul contracts mean for you? And then like going in and asking, channeling what's the soul contract between the baby, what was their life purpose? And usually it's a one word answer. Like, what were you meant to learn in the womb? What did you take away? What do you want to tell her for the next baby? What is wisdom you want to share with her? And that always ends with like really positive fuzzies for sure. Like a closure, as much as a person can have closure with a loss of a miscarriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Social mores was the words I was looking for earlier. You know what to say and do, but with miscarriages, it's not there yet. And I do feel like there's an awareness that is getting, that it is becoming more, we're bringing it into the public space to be able to talk about if someone so chooses. I also want to make sure to say that, like, we're talking about it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody wants to talk about it, and that's okay too.
Right.
It's everybody's personal journey and choice and all of that. So yeah, that's really, really amazing. And I do agree that there are things that it was learning. The baby was learning the things that it was here to also teach everyone around them, and the levels of compassion and love and all of those things that come with that process, as as a mother and as a family.
I work with a lot of same-sex couples and a lot of women who are going through IUI and IVF. And I approach things a little bit different. Even if they don't have a positive test result, I treat it like a loss. I treat every round of those fertility treatments as a loss.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't. Like, a lot of other like holistic practitioners may disagree with me, and that's them. But for me, that was an attempt, and it's much different than if you're a heterosexual couple and you're trying to have sex that month when you're ovulating. It's very, very different. There's a lot more money, there's a lot more effort, there's a lot more emotional energy around it. And what I notice is that if we honor and we take a moment to honor those cycles and do a clearing, a cleansing, so to speak, before you attempt again, I have noticed that in the clients that we've done that, they have conceived much better. Meaning like consistent, maybe not necessarily the one immediate after, but the second one, or they're able to get in with those womb cleansing and blessings. They're also able to connect deeper to themselves because layers are being removed. There's less barriers between them. I say a portal to your soul. Like, your womb is your portal to your soul, it's a portal to the universe. Like, everything that you create in your life is from your womb. How much more can I make you feel like yourself after these sessions, so that you're curious again and you're feeling joy and you're starting to laugh again and you're living in between these appointments?
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's such an important perspective and really beautiful. And yeah, I can see that's just really amazing. Thank you. Well, and I love that we can kind of shift into that piece of it, the joy that comes from the work that you're doing as well. So the joy of the Reiki babies that like you said, kind of the warm and fuzzy pieces of it too. We kind of started off talking about the some of the harder parts of it, but what about those beautiful miracles and blessings of those Reiki babies that come in?
So we're up to 71 Reiki babies, and a lot of that has come from the membership, private coaching, and the other parts have come from my monthly circles. A lot of people get pregnant from the free Reiki circle that we do online over Zoom. And those babies, some of them actually, I'm lucky enough to, some of them are local here to Nebraska. And I have probably 7. No, I have 8 local here in the city. And then the rest are all over South Africa, Australia, all over the US. And it's really exciting. Like, so what I have developed is Reiki. I have a pregnancy circle in the membership, and we just move them into the pregnancy portion. And we have a pregnancy healing call every month, and we go through, what are you hearing? And through enough practice, I actually in 2021, I was I was in a session with a client, and she was pregnant after 9 years. And we had done coaching together, and she had 3 miscarriages, and it was a really tough pregnancy, but I got to give consistent Reiki to her through her pregnancy. And it was the first time when I was scanning that the baby spoke to me and said, "Scan my chakras." And I said, "Say what?" And he said, "Scan my chakras." And it was the first time that, as I'm scanning, and I usually have my eyes closed, and I can see, and I know the gifts are different for every Reiki practitioner, but he showed me his chakras. I nearly peed myself. I was like, what? I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Look at my chakras." And what I had noticed as I got to know him, he said, "This is and I have in my practice, I'm able to see, what I've noticed, I'm very observant. So patterns are important. Is somebody usually has a super chakra is what I call it. And I know this is just my way of doing things, like a super chakra. So that's related to their strengths that they're naturally good at, and maybe one that is perpetually deficient or needs more strength throughout, like that always needs more support." And he showed me his heart, and he goes, "Look at this, look what I can do." And he like showed me his heart, and it was like this just big bright light from his chest. And this is all in utero. And he's like, "Yeah, my feet kind of ache." And then I had looked at my notes, and it was like her root chakra was closed, and at the beginning of the session. So he mirrored her a lot, but he goes, "But this is fine. Give me time. I'll fix her heart." And she was really scared the entire pregnancy because she had so many losses, rightfully so. So, but he goes, "This one I'll struggle with." So he showed me his super chakra and the one he'll need support with. And then I said, and then I got to ask him questions as he's in utero. And I was like, "Well, he just wants you to know, he wants you to reassure him always that he is safe." And so I gave her that, and it's really great. That was in 2021. He had his first birthday already, and he's thriving, and she's 2 weeks away from giving her second Reiki baby. And the way that she's parenting him now, and the way that showed up in that first session is so true. The way he is fearless in a lot of ways, but needs a lot of reassurance and grounding. So like he'll go and do something that was really scary and jump off something and then run right back to her, and like he needs a hug and needs reassurance, and then he'll go away. So he's independent, and then also needs a lot of reassurance and grounding. So that is something that's really magical that's happened. Reiki's meant to evolve, right? And just as my skills have changed, babies surprise me because they're all different, especially whether they're earthside or in utero. Or when I'm channeling, I can usually see how many babies, like if I'm in a session, most of the time I can see the babies will show up for me, and they come in circles for me, and every person's symbols are so different. But if it's a solid circle, then I know it'll be a successful pregnancy. And they usually say, like, "I'm willing to wait." So sometimes they say, "I'm willing to wait for this lifetime or the next," or "I'm coming with hell's fury." Like, like that. I can usually tell the energy. Gender is very fluid for me. So I'm not very great at, like, there's fertility psychics. If you want to know if you're having a boy or girl, I'm not your girl. Like, I can't do that. But I can usually tell you what their personality is going to be like. And I'm usually, if I can channel, like they give me the dates, I'm usually spot on. with the babies, but it's not something, or like something when account for their birth. That's really helpful, is the babies in utero once they're pregnant or something like that. They will say, she needs to account for this or something like that. It's very helpful. So like when we're planning our birth and we're doing our birth plan, are we accounting for how baby wants to be birthed into the world?
Yeah.
It's a different perspective than most people would consider, but it's a very important one because how we're birthed matters so much. And what mom goes through during pregnancy matters so much.
Yeah.
That's a loaded one.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to expand on that or?
Sure. So basically, you know, there is this fact is that your grandma was pregnant with your mom and she already had her eggs that were going to become you. So how your grandma's pregnancy, whether she was supported or not, would directly influence and impact scientifically her DNA and how that's encoded and all that. So your grandma's influence, how she experienced life during her pregnancy, whether she felt supported or not, would greatly influence your line, your mom's experience, and then you. So for a great way to break any of that is to make sure that you are supported and that you are feeling emotionally safe in all of your relationships and making boundaries. Preserving your peace is a great way to look at boundaries. Not that you're saying no to people or you're letting them down, but what are you doing to preserve your peace and protect your baby so that when you're going to give birth and during this sacred time, because pregnancy is sacred, you are treated like a queen. You are having the best chances of making this huge life event as easy as possible. It doesn't need to be harder. So what are we doing to make sure that you are being worshipped and supported and letting this child be welcomed into the world in a harmonious space as best as possible, as calmly as possible, and confidently and comfortably as possible. All of that makes a big difference in also setting you up for postpartum to be restorative instead of frantic or problematic. I have a theory that the more you heal up front, the less complicated fertility, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum will be. Postpartums in birth are very vulnerable, and a lot of unhealed traumas show their ugly faces in postpartum. They stem from deep wounds that are untreated or unaddressed. So, yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit more about postpartum? Because, you know, it's such a big,
Sure.
yeah.
So for me, I got attuned to Reiki. Ollie was 6 months. Yeah, it was 6 months after he was born. So that was June of 2017. And I really thought it was going to fix all my problems, and it didn't. It was something I had to learn. It was the muscle I needed. And I was so deep in my postpartum, and a lot of people don't know between 6 and 8 months in postpartum, that's the peak of the darkness. It's a peak of, you know, there's an increase in suicide, and there's a lot of, that's when like the postpartum depression and anxiety can heighten the most. It's not necessarily right after. And I was in the thick of it at that point, and I was struggling to get by day to day. I had been diagnosed with severe PPA and PPD, which is postpartum anxiety and depression, more anxious than depressed. And it was just a lot. I didn't have support. The support we had was only because we had paid for it. My family lived, you know, my close network was in Miami. My mom lived in Pennsylvania. My in-laws didn't know how to handle my trauma. They didn't know what to make sense of it. It didn't make sense of it. So even as loving as they were, they kind of backed away. And that I hired a postpartum doula. I had a traumatic birth, emergency C-section. At that time, I had not shared with anyone my sexual assaults. And I had shared with my husband I had an abortion in my 20s. But I didn't really share that with my medical team. And compounded with the hard journey and the physical trauma of my body and the sleep deprivation, my postpartum was really terrible. And of course, my grief from losing my dad crept up again, no matter how much I healed that, but that had just rattled me for a long time, for many years after. And I did talk therapy. I did Reiki consistently, and I did frequent check-ins with my midwife, and really the consistent Reiki and feeling like getting grounded was like, if I had to pick in, getting grounded was, and getting the right nourishment and sleep and getting ground. I couldn't ground myself. I was just completely, I don't know what the right word is. My body had just been erratic. Like it had just been depleted in every way. It had been destroyed. It had been chewed up and spit out. And I was breastfeeding because that was the only thing that I had onto and I could hold on to at that point. So between Reiki, talk therapy, and just like having good sleep, which didn't come often, was really the three things that kept me well enough to function. I even quit my job of 5 years. I think women also forget that you can be powerful in postpartum, even while you're healing. Like you can do really big things. I left the job that moved me to Nebraska after 5 years. I only lasted there 6 weeks. As soon as I went back, it was hell. It was hell on earth for me. So much had changed. I didn't realize I had changed. I had 4 months at home with this child, and I was fine as long as I was sitting on my couch with this child. I didn't know how to function going to Walmart. I didn't know how to open the mail anymore. Like I had changed so much from this highly functional top like 1% performer in my corporate job, making great money, to, all right, I'm learning to pump and triple feed. If you know what that means, it's like an hour-long thing. I was super committed to breastfeeding because again, it was the only thing I had left. My birth plan had gone through the window, and I felt like nothing was going my way. But I never stopped listening to my gut, meaning like, this doesn't feel right. This is, and something about becoming a mother was something about having Ollie made me say the words, well, this is not good enough. This is not good enough anymore. And I think because I loved him so much, I started to love myself for the first time in my life. And the postpartum was, this is not good enough anymore. This life, this hour-long drive to this manufacturing plant is not good enough anymore. The way that people treat me here is not good enough anymore. And I ended up getting a job that was a mile down the road from my house, paying me $20,000 more. And I didn't have to do the hour commute anymore. And that allowed us to put him into a daycare where I actually felt peaceful and that he was safe in. A lot changed in my postpartum because I had that support, and I understand that's a privilege and a luxury. And I believe that the more support you can offer moms, meaning where they can feel seen, where they can feel like they matter, will make all the difference. And stop holding the babies. Don't kiss them. Do the laundry, make them food, bring them water, clean the litter box, to walk their dog. These are the things that moms need. They don't necessarily need you to hold the baby. They need things done that will shift the energy in someone's house. Do the laundry, put it away. Postpartum is allow them, maybe ask them, when's the last time you showered? And I guarantee you they're going to shower, a good meal, a good sleep changes everything, especially in postpartum. And I think in postpartum it's not impossible. It's just, I believe in every postpartum, we have to, one is, can we plan it? Like, what are we doing to have a postpartum plan? But two is, what is your most motivation in postpartum? Like, what are you holding on to get through this really tough period? And not every postpartum is tough. Some people walk through this like it's a breeze. I mean, if you have a vaginal birth, your recovery is usually a lot quicker if there's no tearing. If you didn't have like C-sections, a major surgery, you're going to be out for 8 weeks minimum, So.
And what about have you seen kind of the not opposite of experience of postpartum, but that feeling of not being super connected to motherhood and baby
Oh yeah.
postpartum
It's more
experience and feeling the guilt and the shame? That was a little bit more of my experience, where I had to really come into motherhood, and I felt connected to her, but I didn't love motherhood for a while.
I
I'm
think
being
that's where I
complete.
am with motherhood now.
Huh?
That's where I am with motherhood right now, actually.
Six
To be
is
no,
really hard,
100%,
by the
100%.
way.
I
Everybody
told my
says it
husband
gets,
yesterday, I miss the days I was childless and
yeah.
I prayed for this son. But let me tell you, like everyone has that phase. About 15% of the people I see and that I talk to and treat or work with, they are slow to connect to baby
Mhm.
or slow to really accept like what happened, like
Yes.
not like the trauma, but like, oh, wait a minute, there's a human here.
Yeah.
There's something going on. Like we need to, the connection comes a lot with providing moments of bonding and grows over time.
Yeah.
That happens in creating space and experiences where you'll want to bond with baby. Um, and that understanding that that's perfectly normal too. And people who don't coo and coddle baby right away, they're usually condemned in society. What do you mean? Like, so that's not also openly talked about, but it is also very common in being patient with yourself to understand, like, maybe what usually like where does that come from? Like sometimes it's worth exploring and sometimes it's just having patience with yourself to understand that like this journey is going to be for the long haul. Just be patient with yourself and it'll eventually connect.
And have you found in some of your clients that Reiki can help that as well?
Yes, and the cases that it's been where we need to go back to the parental relationship, where is there a disconnect with a parent, and um it's usually maybe a parent left or they were there in the home but they weren't emotionally available for the child for connection and they're not close now. There's just so many different variables, but usually we go back. I like to go use like the timeline method and go all the way back. What's the first memory we can connect and then go from there. But that usually is helpful of understanding. And then a lot of people also, when we're working on parental relationships as they're a new parent, is understanding and accepting their parent as a human being and shifting their mindset into, yeah, they may have really messed up, but is there a pattern there? Did they do the best that they could? Were they toxic? Were they a narcissist? Like what breaking all of that down and understanding like, okay, and like what can we let go of? And then what are we doing forward as a coping mechanism if we do have to interact, or are you putting boundaries around that relationship to make sure that you feel safe? And usually that shifts them. Like once we resolve and they feel like, oh, there's like a completed feeling there, they are able to create space for them to move into connecting with their child a lot better.
I have
Interesting.
a couple of questions. And I'll say them both and then you can go into each. So one of the questions I have is how what you're doing is supporting those people who aren't treated like queens during pregnancy or in between trying to get pregnant, or they don't have that support, or maybe they're going to be a single parent, or that, and how this can support them. And then the other question that I have, of course, being in the generation that we had no idea about postpartum, we had no idea about a lot of stuff. A lot of it was, we were a lot younger, commonly having children, and there really wasn't a lot of information, and you were kind of just like, survive it.
Right.
But there were a couple of instances, even in, more recent generations, where I've seen postpartum depression that was very unrecognized. And because of not having the information about what postpartum depression was, there was a lot of shaming around that. And also a lot of, like the support actually got pulled away. I think you mentioned that, you didn't have people who really understood what you were going through, where now I think there's more information. And I think it's still a challenge for people going through it. But going back on that timeline again, both healing, because I can say that I didn't have an understanding of it. Now that I can look back at some of the pregnancies and the postpartum depression of friends or family members that experienced it, and I didn't have the knowledge or the experience to understand what it was. So even where I tried to help and do some of the things that you mentioned, like, well, let me do the dishes, or let me do this, or go take a nap, some of them weren't able to receive that, like they weren't able to receive the help. So all of that wrapped around to how to go back and heal that dynamic for people who still have not ever, really received the support around that experience that they went through, both as the person who had the depression and the person who really didn't know how to support that person.
So let me make sure I understand the question. So you want to know how a person who may have had postpartum in the past, but they're past that phase of life now, how they can go back and probably address that experience where they felt unsupported. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
So with that, I think is, for me, that experience potentially could be a trigger. That could be a deep rooted thing that can then trigger something else in current life, meaning like, so the most immediate thing that I would recommend is understanding, what did you feel when you felt unsupported, and understanding those emotions. There is a great meditation I love. It's the one where I like to put like a number to it. It's the shape. I think it's the Holy Fire meditation. I like to combine that meditation with a lot of things that are in the past. So how I would frame it is, and I do this actually in sessions. So is we go back to the event and I do a laundry list of, okay, we're back here. What are we feeling? Give me just, and they purge them. And then I go back and say, where do you feel that in your body? They directly from the Holy Fire meditation and apply it. What does it feel like? Is it hot? Is it cold? Where do you feel it in your body? And literally go ahead, and I like to add the number to it. Like, what intensity is it? Is it a 0 to a 10? And get all of those emotional triggers out, and do a Reiki guided meditation to remove as much of, or de-trigger or neutralize that. So with adding numbers to that, that's just my little spin on it. With that meditation, is to allow to gauge the intensity of the emotion. So if it's a 10 being the highest, and then afterwards I'll say, okay, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What number is it now? And they're not going to remember the number they gave me for anger or remorse or regret before. Did it go to a 10 to a 2? And then where is it now? What color is it? Do you still feel it? Sometimes they don't feel it at all. And then that allows at least a recognition of those emotions. And that is a huge shift of feeling like I wasn't supported. What did I feel? But then also, if they're Reiki attuned, we do Gasho, and imagine that version of yourself and doing the distance Reiki back to that version of themselves if they're Reiki attuned. A lot of the people that I work with in private coaching, I end up doing a Reiki attunement too. And also then, okay, and then this is the key kicker here for long-term like success, in my opinion, long-term healing is, have you felt this way since, and when? So have you felt similar feelings to this since then? If so, when? Are they in relationships with you? Are they people that are in your life? Were those from decisions, or is it from another person? What can we do to make life changes to ensure that you're setting yourself up successfully in relationships where you are emotionally supported and that you can have not repeat this event as much as possible? I feel like a lot of things coming from support has a lot to do with how much we're choosing of ourselves in daily decisions. And emotional safety and security is not often talked about. And it's something that is a skill that I certainly had to learn. How to speak to someone respectfully. In corporate, yeah, it's easy, but in a relationship, I had my husband and I got married. I said, I think we need to do a marriage conference because I know how to be a bad wife. I don't know how to be a good wife. And we went to every marriage conference under the sun. So like I had to learn emotional safety. It's not something that was in my home growing up. I didn't know. I mean, I just learned nonviolent communication was a thing. I did a podcast and I didn't know what nonviolent communication was. Like things like that. So I mean, that's like on a whole nother level, and that's getting super like technical with it. But understanding from that experience, what did you feel? Releasing it through Reiki or in the spots that they're saying this is like the chakras that are storing that, clearing them as much as possible, releasing it. I also like to ask the questions, does this feel complete to you? And that they'll say yes or no. And if it's a no, then we'll do a repeat of that guided meditation and ask them the same list. And sometimes I ask, is there anything else that you want to add to this list? And did something else come up? And usually like to take about a week to 2 weeks in between those sessions. But that's how I technically apply how I would move forward with it, with Reiki and the guided meditation of like, this is a past event and how do we move forward with it? But the numbers are super helpful.
I really like that. And for any of you listening that are not familiar with that specific meditation that's taught in the Holy Fire Reiki Master classes, what she's really talking about is methods of removing that trauma. And so if you have your own Reiki methods of removing that trauma, the steps that you were talking about, the intensity, those can be used with any Reiki training. And
right.
Actually, you can also ask Reiki to go in and to do that work that you described to release those experiences. And I really like the idea of asking, is this complete? And also the question of, where is this showing up anywhere else that seems unrelated, but they can go back and go, oh, look at that. That's related to this.
Yeah.
So that's really good advice.
Well, and because you're using the energy, it's helping really go into those deep spaces of, I know it's all related in our heads, but also in your heart space, and that clarity that can come when you're in that really Reiki space. And then on top of it, using the Reiki energy to help heal, as it
right
into the light of Reiki.
Probably even just acknowledgement of it.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Would be a big thing. Because I think of, again, some of the women in my generation, and there's zero idea of this and of postpartum depression, and thinking back and how probably, like you say, it does show up in other areas. So even some acknowledgement of that experience.
Yeah. For my mom, we talked about it. And for sure, a lot of the ancestral trauma repeated down to me. I'm the baby of 3, and she got divorced when I was 11 months old. So I was her firecracker child. So basically I'm like meant to break all the cycles. And as she's aged, my mom has apologized for things I thought she'd never apologize for. And I didn't need one anymore. But and we've talked openly about like, the things that she's endured. And for 100% sure, the things that I had experienced, she had experienced much greater and much more, and with much less support, much less resources, or no support at all. So I think that having conversations with people around you, if you can. I worked really hard on my relationship with my mom. It wasn't an easy one. We had to heal quite a bit, but she's been committed to making it worthwhile and trying really hard. And she's grown so much. But if it weren't for those conversations, it actually validated me, like that my experience that I had went through after I had come out of it, talking to her and listening. What was it like after you gave birth to my brother and sister and me? And I know that those life circumstances were different, and just also hearing, like, trying to peek through, the trauma that she was speaking about and the pain, like trying to get a full picture of it. Understanding that the things that pained me were not just something that I did alone, or that someone who was related to me also had that pain, that was validating for both of us.
Yeah, boy, really fascinating.
Yeah.
And then what about how to support people that, maybe their life circumstance just isn't going to be that they are treated like queens,
So I think this really it's not an easy question to answer. The
Yeah.
first thing that I say is decide what is possible for you. And what are the few things that are, one, make sure you're physically safe. Are you in a safe situation? That has to be your first priority. Second is, what are the free resources in your area? I feel like there's a lot of community that will show up for you, if you allow them to. And then are you open to receiving? I always say you can't receive blessings with a closed fist. So you can be angry and receive, but you can't have a closed fist. So is your hand open or is it closed? And I think understanding your energy and understanding that is really important. There is also a lot of great nonprofits in different areas and different cities that will provide grants and actually pay for you to have support. There is the Better Omaha Birth Project, or the Omaha Birth Project, I think that's what it's called. It's a nonprofit, and they receive grants, and they have birth doulas that they will pay for you to have if you qualify. There's an amazing organization called La Leche League, and they have meetups. There is community, and there is also a lot of free online groups. I know that also there are usually Zoom groups depending on your community. My friend Rachel Tran runs a free parenting group online and has started a free postpartum circle. And she's a parenting coach and a postpartum doula. So, and that's free. There's a lot of resources. I find that Facebook and TikTok are great resources to find what is free to you. I saw that there was this movement on TikTok. It was a group of moms that were creating this movement, and they all would go to somebody's house that didn't have any support, and they were postpartum, like new moms, and they would go and they basically would go in and they would attack the house and clean it top to bottom. And there's these good-willed women who are like, we've been there, we know what it's like. I feel like that there's a lot more humanity. There's a lot more good-willed people than that can be found if you seek it. And I understand that everyone's circumstances is different. Now, if you don't feel emotionally safe in your relationship, then conversations need to be had. Hard conversations are hard, but what's worse is not having the conversation and nothing changing. I mean, I've had really difficult conversations in my marriage of like, I didn't realize I was yelling. And I didn't realize the damage I was doing when I was yelling. I'm Latina, I'm loud, but I didn't realize when I raised my voice that was yelling. I was like, I was just talking. They're like, no, you're yelling. I was like, I thought this was yelling, but like learning a lot. There also is listening, actively listening to the other party. Do they feel safe? Do they feel heard? Do they feel seen? Also is like meeting their partner where they're at. Do they have good conversational skills? Do you need to go to therapy? I said what I said. Maybe you need to go to therapy. Maybe you need to learn how to grow together. Are they open to these things? Maybe this is not the right person for you. Like, these are questions only that person can answer. I've had couples who, women who were in relationships where they had to go to counseling and they had to learn how to speak to each other and create that new space while they were pregnant. I've had couples that never fought before. Like every relationship's different, but if you have to start with asking yourself first, what do you want in this pregnancy, in this child's life, in your postpartum, in your relationship? What needs to change with that relationship and what needs to change with you? So we have to make sure that we're checking in with ourselves. Are we a good partner? What is there anything that I need to improve? A lot of the changes I had to make were with me. Honestly, I think the first 3 years of our marriage were like my fault most of the time, but to be quite honest, like, but me working late, there's like another trip and the work trip, what's wrong with you? Like, I didn't know I literally, just to be quite frank, I'm a super open book, but I didn't know how to be a good wife. Didn't know how to be a good partner. That's a different thing. I knew how to be a lover and a friend, but like to be a partner for life, what did he deserve? And was I giving him what he deserved? In my first 3 years, I was not. Totally different partner than I am today, 8 years in, versus I was like when we first got married. So I think that has to be looked at and checked in. And I think that that's really uncomfortable, even looking in the mirror and asking yourself. It was really a lot to swallow to say, like, you know what, you're right. I screwed this up. I really need to change these behaviors. And sometimes it starts with you.
That's great advice.
Mhm.
And I know you talked about receiving, and I know for myself, and asking for help, that always was the most difficult part. And once I started to learn how to ask for help and then receive the help, it's amazing how it shifted everything. Yeah.
That's 100% true. I think also is not asking for help too late, but asking for help in just general, but asking before the 11th hour. Like, don't like, you can ask for help, sure, like after everything's exploded, but know that you can ask even when it's slightly hard, like ask. It doesn't have to be a tornado in your house or you on your last like string of hope with parenting or with your partner to say, hey, I need help. And I think that if we're talking about like relationships, I think that these conversations shouldn't be, sporadic. They should be a part of your routine life. So I learned when we got married, finances were super important. And I learned at a marriage conference, you should have a date night in a neutral space talking about money. And it was not technically a date. It was our financial planning meeting. And we just happened to be eating at that minute. We weren't talking about groceries. It was topic specific. And it was in a neutral space. It wasn't at home. It was at a neutral space. So as much could be done. I think also we do emotional check-ins every week. And this is not anything to do with a date. What's not working for you? And there's also a praise moment. You know what? You did this and it was really great. Or, I feel conflicted when this happens, and learning how to use those statements and doing emotional check-in is like an oil change for your relationship, can be really like kind of almost preventative maintenance. And so to speak, to make sure that your relationship is feeling nurtured, but also like you need a lot of the things at the root of this is that they don't feel seen or heard or that they matter. If you can make a person feel seen and heard and that they matter and that they're valued, a lot of the other things will go away. But so if you can make a mom feel that way and your partner, and if you want to feel that way, are you delivering it to your partner as well? If not, then what does that look like? Those three or four things, whatever I said, to them. How does that look like to them? Ask them deliberately for you to feel seen in our relationship. What do I need to say or do? And receive it. It looks different. It literally was me sitting quietly and not saying anything back. And just at the end of it, he'll say, I'm done, because I'm a fixer. And I say, I received that. Thank you for sharing. And I do not do anything other than, and we end the conversation. I do not fix it. I don't respond. I process it and we go on. And at a later time, we'll revisit, but he needs to feel heard. And that was objective. It was not me like, well, we can do this. No. Like, he just needed to be heard. I don't need to fix him. He's an adult.
Oh, so interesting.
Sorry, that wasn't super
Especially,
Reiki related.
I've
That was
been
like
married-
relationship advice. Like,
I think I've been married now, is it 46 or I think we're at 47 years maybe this year. And, again, just going back to new information, that is there to support people with those kinds of concepts that, we certainly didn't have it modeled. I didn't have it modeled in my, family of origin. And so fortunately, actually, my husband did. And so he had it. And then he went through it. I mean, not that he didn't have his own stuff, trust me, but yeah. So it's really, I love the information that you're sharing, and also really that information about looking for those external resources and solutions for support.
right.
And
And if
I
you
didn't
need Reiki,
even-
come to
even
the free
before you said it.
circle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't
Get
even
free
know about
Reiki.
that. Yeah, yes, and Reiki, of course, makes the difference too. Well,
In my membership, we offer from fertility all the way through postpartum. So I have modules for every season of life. So you can start in fertility, but it's supposed to serve from tip to tail, from when you're trying to conceive all the way even into postpartum. And postpartum is very lonely. So having a phone call and a community of like-minded women, and I have it hosted on Mighty Network. So it's an app on your phone. So you can direct message me. Or if you need help, you can always like DM me or voice note me on Instagram. I mean, always reach out. I think always reach out.
so tell us about your membership, because
Sure.
not everybody really knows what that even means.
So I found that either Reiki was, I wanted to make it more accessible, and I went fully online, and right before the pandemic happened, and I stopped doing in-person Reiki completely. And I wanted to create a space where it was cost effective and inexpensive for women to receive consistent Reiki. And that's where I created the membership, and it's $49 a month, and they have access to hours of guided meditations and recorded distance Reiki videos on different topics, anywhere from the 2-week wait after IVF to how to reduce pain how to reduce pain with their periods, to postpartum energy booster, to and there's master classes, how to use a pendulum, what are chakras, how to scan your chakras with the pendulum, and all of that's in the master class. So it's made to meet everyone where they're at in their motherhood journey, from fertility to postpartum, at in a self-healing pace. You heal at your own space, and you get support through the app. You can message me directly if you have questions, or ask in the community section, and they have access to all of these modules and all of their meditations that I make myself and I record, and they can request some too. And then they have monthly live healing calls as well. So the whole gamut, so that they can know that they can heal at their own space. And then I have my group coaching program if they want to dive deeper and they want to activate that self-healing where they're learning Reiki 1. And we learn to connect to baby, and we're optimizing your fertility for 12 weeks before you try to conceive. Some people conceive during the program. So yeah.
How do they access it?
How do they access it or
The
sign up?
membership. How do they access the membership?
They can access and sign up through my website, carolinasotomayor.com. They download the Mighty Networks app, and they can access that through their phone or desktop. And it's just an app on their phone that they can access and DM. It's super, super cool. And yeah, they can sign up through the website.
Okay. Carolina Sotomayor.
Sotomayor.com, CarolinaSotomayor.com. Yeah, I would be so grateful to have you in the membership.
Well, I love that. I know we're running to the end of time because you have children and a child that you need to go get, but let's let Robyn.
I do have to ask, when is Ollie's birthday?
December 11th, 2016.
Luna's is December 14th, 2016.
Shut up.
So he was about 6 months old in June 2017. I'm like, oh my God.
Our puppy's name is Luna.
Oh, nice. You guys have a puppy?
We have 2. They're in their crates. I didn't want to risk them like snoring. They're not loud, but they do snore. I have a Cavalier King Charles and a Cocker Spaniel. Okay. So yeah, Rico and Luna. So we had to give them Latin names, but yeah.
Nice. We just got a puppy like over Christmas, and it's
what kind?
Chaos Golden Retriever.
Oh, I love those.
Yes. Really funny. We have similar streams, Carolina.
I love that. We're best friends already.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, again, Carolina you said you're kind of where your biggest following is on TikTok.
Yes, I have 15,000 on TikTok and Pinterest too. And I'm active on Instagram every day too. Okay. But our biggest following is on TikTok. TikTok is a lot of fun. Reiki is huge on there.
Yes, it is.
And what's your TikTok name?
I was just going to say.
The Carolina Sotomayor.
Okay.
Awesome. And then everything else is kind of Carolina Sotomayor.
Yeah, I just made up my name.
Yeah, you'd be able to find you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We have just loved this conversation. As we kind of talked before, we'll have to have you on again.
I'd love to.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Other skill set.
Yeah, and thank you for all that you do for the community as well.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. It's like I say, from my perspective, listening to you as young women and the information that you have is so important and necessary. And I really appreciate your message and your skills. And
I appreciate that so much.
Not much older than you, watching the women go through even the discovery of postpartum depression, postpartum issues, fertility issues, all of it. It's, has, like Robyn said, so much of it has just been kind of accept it all, deal with it, move on. And
then the millennials came along.
1983, baby.
84.
So, 1957.
Yeah, right. I know. We have, of course, we thank the teachers and things that came before us.
Well, no, I
talk about our stuff.
So just so thrilled to see it because it's essential, and not just for the women, but for the men and the women's lives. That, we talk about the divine feminine and the sacred masculine and how this all works for everyone. And so it's really great information. So thank you.
Thank
all
you.
right.
Make me cry.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
it is.
My cheeks hurt.
Matters. Thank you.
And
to everyone else that's listening, just many blessings to all of you. Again, you can find us at ReikiLifestyle.com. Carolina at Carolina Sotomayor. Of course, we'll have that in the show notes on both YouTube and our podcast. And we're going to have her back because we have a whole other subject to talk about with her that she's got great skill sets in. And so we'll be seeing more of her, and thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Alright.
Bye,
Oh, I should
everyone.
mention just real quick, but I want to have enough time for Carolina for just a minute. That I forgot to mention that our Japan class that we are teaching on Mount Kurama is happening in April. William Rand and I are teaching together on Mount Kurama in the middle of April or the beginning of April. So just a quick notice, and you can email us for that info.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and many blessings.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.